Hello, world, and welcome to No Brainer, another fantastic show. We have a fantastic guest tonight, but first, I got to say hello to my co-host, D-Rec. What up, brother?
How you doing, man?
Another day in paradise. You know how I
Actually,
roll.
I'm as good as I was 3 seconds ago when we were talking. So I guess this is just a second time asking, but everything here is peachy, fabulous in the beautiful state of Florida. 82 beautiful degrees and clear and sunny. So no complaints here.
I was talking to my voice coach today, and we'll go into that later on. But yeah, they had snow.
Where's
they're
he at?
they're up in Albany.
Oh my word! So where's Albany in New York? Is it east or west?
It's by Massachusetts.
Yes,
So
north.
Oh,
that
It's
would
okay.
a little bit
be
north. Yeah.
Oh
yeah,
yeah, there was that big storm. Did you see that?
right over the Tappan Zee. Well, actually, they said they didn't get it bad. I think my mom got it worse in Pennsylvania.
It looked bad on the radar. I was like, what is this purple stuff? But I guess it's up north in April, right? I mean, I remember living up there. It's like you aren't out of the clear till like maybe the last week of May or first week of June. It's wool coats and crossing your fingers until then. That's crazy.
Unlike Florida, where it's January, we wear shorts. Let's introduce our guest, Ross Arntson. How are you, Arntson?
Yep.
Arntson. Yeah, just making it sure. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you for
Appreciate it.
joining us. I'm glad. So I was on a Facebook podcast page and just happened to jump on the need a guest section. I put out that we love to interview people. We love interesting, exciting entrepreneurs, successful stories, just people we want to chat with. We've talked to everything from doctors to pastors to physical therapists to everybody and anybody who wants to have a great conversation. Derek and I used to be on another podcast, which it was we love him and Trippy's our boy, but we went in different directions. He's purely political, and this is not a political show. This is a fun show
All
where we
right.
just talk about life and how we can be successful. And so, Ross, tell us a little bit about yourself. Where are you? What do you do? What's going on?
I am in Seattle, and right now it is not raining. Just want to let everybody know that. So we're just heading into our non-rainy season. So that's really good. But I did spend the last week with my in-laws down in Palm Desert, and where there is no such thing as grass, and if there is grass, it's actually made out of plastic,
Right.
and it was freaking hot, and so I
Is
was,
that Palm Springs like California?
yeah, well, yeah. So
It's
it's just about 15-20 minutes, I think, west of Palm Springs itself,
Mhm.
and so it's a nice little retirement community where my in-laws live, and it's if you, I'm used to green. And just to go where everything is, sandy brown and there's no grass, there's some trees, palm trees and things. It's a nice place to visit for me, but it's pretty freaking hot. So my wife goes down probably three, sometimes 4 times a year and spends a few weeks with her mom. She's kind of getting up there. And so they, on her last trip, they're kind of like, does Ross not like us? Because he just never comes down with you. And she's like, no, he says he just can't take the heat. And I'm from northern Minnesota.
Oh my gosh.
I like cold, and so my wife loves the heat, and so by the time he adapts to the heat, it's time to go. So it's just like to me, it's like a why bother trip. And
That's
but I love
funny.
him dearly. And if you're out there listening, I love you dearly. But it is damn hot. So it was nice weather while I was there. So I was there for 4 days. My wife is still there. The next day after I left, it shot up over 100. And I'm just like, whew, I missed that one.
Yeah, but it's probably a different heat than that we're used to down here.
It is. It is.
That's
I've been to
that's how it is.
Florida. I lived in Florida when I was a kid, and yeah, the humidity in Florida is more brutal, and
Yes.
but it's just a lot different. And but I'm still a cold weather guy. Always have been, probably always will be. And and I like it. I mean, we have our warm time here in the Seattle area. Now in Eastern Washington, you have the four seasons. You have your 90, 100-degree summers and such, but we're right up against a mountain range, so that kind of keeps us kind of self-contained, and that's why we get
Is
so much
Seattle
rain.
is Seattle close to Canada?
Yes,
Mhm.
yeah.
Okay.
As a matter of fact, my partner, my business partner, he lives in Vancouver, Canada, so he's about 3 hours away.
Okay. Well,
Vancouver's
funny story. You
beautiful.
talk about cold. Both well, Derek's from Michigan, which is cold, but my
Yeah,
wife is from Iowa, and the minute she could get out of there, she got out of there. She'll never go anywhere where it snows.
yeah.
So we're
That's
stuck
that's
here. We have talked about maybe going up to like Tennessee or North Carolina, somewhere up there. But I don't know. I think we've turned our house into pretty much we're never going to move out of it, I
yeah.
think. That's
You're
the
you're
My
you're putting in all the trinket stuff that don't add value to a buyer but add value to
to
you.
you, yeah,
You're like the
exactly.
guy from the you're putting the spinner rims on the Cutlass right now, Zach. Like
Yeah,
the jelly bean lighting and the patio and the fencing of
You don't think that'll sell? Let me tell you why.
you know what I mean. You know what I mean.
Come
You're
on now.
listen. I know you redid
We're
your
not
kitchen
putting we're
too,
not
but
putting
listen
lipstick
from a
on a
seller
pig.
standpoint, master suite kitchen. You know what I'm talking about.
yeah.
You're doing you're Mr. Bells and Whistles.
He's nesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, you haven't been over. Derek, you haven't been over in a while, but we put a TV out on the patio now, so
Ooh.
that's right.
It's not covered though.
Yeah. Oh yeah, yeah. It's got the TV has it's a console cover.
I got you. I got you.
Yeah, yeah.
Cool.
That's cool.
So Ross, what do you do?
So I am a business and entrepreneur consultant. My partner and I both are, and what we do is we work with a lot of the purpose-driven entrepreneurs, and we kind of help them navigate the storm of business and the stress and the anxiety and the overwhelm that's just come now, especially now with the modern economy. And through this, they can better achieve their dreams and the desires and not have all that strain and that stress. And it's by applying a very unique program that we created called metacognitive modulation. And it gives them a different aspect, a different view of life, their life, and takes the entire life of themselves um, in one snapshot. So in other words, most of us we tend to compartmentalize our lives. We
Mm-hmm.
have our
Yes.
playtime and we have our business, which business, if you broke it up into a pie, is going to be half of that, maybe three-quarters of that. And then you have your family time, your children time, your recreational time, our spiritual time, or, it's all broken up. And so okay, well, I'm going to spend more time here. Or I'm going to do this today, and I'm going to do this and this. What we work with is that you need to take everything and encompass it all together, and that's going to give you more of that whole life. Because what ends up happening, and I can prove this to you, what ends up happening is that we're all very much work and profession motivated, and we end up spending all of our time in that mode and such. And I'll get to my wife when I get a chance. I'll get to my kids when I get a chance. I'll go out and play when I get a chance and such. And everything becomes just that one thing of just moving forward with your work. And I was just speaking with an entrepreneur and a businessman just a few days ago. And he's probably in his mid 60s, maybe a little bit later, early. And he starts the conversation out with what he's done. I've created 3 businesses. I've done this much money, and I've done this, and I've done this, and I've done this, and I've done this. And I'm like, oh, I said, that's really good. And I said, well, how's your personal life going? He said, I've been divorced 3 times. I said, I don't know my kids.
Yep.
I've had a heart attack, and I'm just like, but he did say, he goes, and after I had my heart attack, I had kind of my epiphany, and I'm like, this isn't worth it.
Right.
So he sold all the businesses and, got himself into a pretty good, solid relationship. But it took him, 6 decades to figure this out.
Yeah. I mean, I call it the cats in the cradle syndrome.
There you go. You know,
Yeah.
it really is. And so, you know, I mean, it's not too late for anybody. And I compliment them, like, listen, I said, there are people that never figure this out.
Right.
And I remember a long, long time ago, I was in my early 20s, and I had this lawyer friend, and he was, you know, decades older than I was. And he sat me down because I was a go-getter. I was just like, go, 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 go. And he sat me down and he just said, listen, nobody ever said from their deathbed, I should have spent more time at the office. And this lesson came 40 years ago, and I can see it in my mind. I can hear his voice, and it always stuck with me. And there was times that I kind of got off the rails and such and just went and burned out and such. But still, it always keeps coming back to that. It's just like, no, none of this is worth it.
I 100% agree. I mean, I have to kind of give my usual story. So in 2018, I had to have brain surgery, and my wife wanted proof. But no, so anyway, after having the surgery, then I had a stroke after the surgery, and then I had to have another surgery to fix anyway, there was a leaky vein or artery, and they went in and fixed it. I was sitting at home recovering, and I had been in the car business. I've been in the car business since 1992. And at this point, I was the pinnacle of it. I was a GM. Actually, I was an area director. I ran 4 dealerships.
Mm-hmm.
I worked 6 days a week, 14 hours a day.
Yeah.
My dogs were going to bite me. They didn't know who I was. My kids were. And I was sitting in bed recovering. And I said to my wife, I said, I don't want to do the car business anymore. And she said, okay, then go do what you do and go make money. Just be happy.
Mm-hmm.
And I realized that if I didn't, I'm not going to say I'd be dead, but I probably would have missed so much more because I moved on to a different career. I had my own business and everything, and I was able to work my own hours. And it was great getting to know my kids again,
Mm-hmm.
getting to know my wife again.
Yeah.
We got to do stuff together. Now I refuse to work a job where I have to work weekends. I won't do it. I'm usually, now don't get me wrong, a client calls me and I take the phone call. I mean, except for Sundays, because Jesus comes first. I can't answer the phone in church. I'll be in trouble. But
so what are you doing all those times when you're talking to me?
I'm driving.
No, Sunday in church.
Oh, I'm just texting you from the back, making sure you're watching, making sure because you're working 7 days a week like a schmuck.
Well, listen, hey, I think we all have one thing in common here. We're talking about, and Ross, maybe you can validate this with the people you work with, but this is how I raised myself to be after a while, dealing with blue collar parents and achievement and just achievement based self worth, right? Where
Mm-hmm.
we say, what's our self worth? How do we rate ourselves as a human being?
Right.
And we look back and we realize the last 10, 20, 30, 40, maybe forever years, for me, probably 25 years, before the epiphany of, wait, my self-worth and value is not 100% based on my achievements.
Mm-mm.
Those are great things. Those are wonderful things, but that's the only way I valued myself.
Right.
For the longest time, and I was like, I'm looking for another word for bullshit, Zach, but that's what it was. It was just wrong. Like I said, those are great things, but when that is,
we're PG-13, so you just used one.
When that's not the core focus that bleeds into your life, it's the soul focus. Then I think
Right.
I think you start to get that empty feeling and that, like, what am I really doing here?
Well,
Yeah.
I've always said that I'd rather be dirt poor living in a hut with my wife, being best friends and loving each other, than being a multimillionaire in a big mansion and passing each other like ships in the night.
Mm-hmm.
What the heck? I mean, when you work so much, at the end of the day, we got a nice house. I got great things, we got things. Well, they're not going with me, but the memories and the love that I've accumulated and accomplished, that goes with me. So
Exactly.
I want my kids and my grandkids to remember who I was, not, Dad, my grandpa always worked, or Dad was always never around. and it's funny because my wife will tell you the same. Her dad ran 8 car dealerships, and up until her mom got sick, she's like, the joke was they don't know where her brother came from because Chuck was never around, so not quite sure how Susie got pregnant. But it was just an on the ongoing joke. But he was successful, and he used to equate success and happiness to money and riches and all those things. And then he realized when his my mother-in-law got sick and he decided to leave the business, that there was far more important things. And he moved down here to Florida, retired down in Punta Gorda, and I mean they lived down on the water in their boat. And then he just spent time doing nothing, and that to him, he says, was his happiness.
Yeah.
He was with his wife, and she, thank God, beat the cancer, and they lived a great life until they've passed recently. But it's just, you're right. The joke. So my mom was, when I was adopted as a baby, and my mom was a school teacher, my dad was a school teacher, and my mom says, "Well, I'm going to stay home and take care of our children," and because then she was pregnant with my sister, and he said, "Well, okay, then I'm going to have to get a part time." She said, "No, no, I'm gonna figure out a way to make money," and she became rather successful in a business called Amway, and I went to all the rah-rah meetings and all the pep rallies and all the trainings. And I could do, at 8 years old, I could do the whole comp
Right.
plan and everything. But the stuff I learned from it was, family and life is your success. The working 40 years for that 401k and that gold watch that they shake your hand and kick you out the door. And then you only have 10 years left to live, maybe, because the average age now, I mean, hopefully we can extend a little bit, but back, I guess when my dad was, that age and everything, was like 70 years old, 80 years old, and that's not, you work your whole life for nothing. Then you retire and you have 10 years left to go have fun. I want to have fun as much as possible whenever I can.
Right.
I know
Yeah.
that's why Derek moved from Michigan to Disney. I mean, Orlando.
I wanna dig into this a little bit with Ross.
Sure.
I know you do. This is right up your alley, brother.
I gave you the shut up text. Um,
My phone doesn't make any noise when you text me.
you gotta turn it on, man. That way
Bro,
we'll hear it and we'll know, we'll have that inside joke on the podcast when I give you the shut up. It'll be
we
like
do
the
want.
ringer,
Speaking of
and only you and
podcasts,
I will
don't
know.
forget we need to talk about Ross, about his
So
podcast.
Ross,
Yeah.
tell us a little. Peel back the onion here.
Sure.
Um, in your consultant role, do you bring in an element of, do you have any like faith or beliefs? Do you act as a psychologist? I mean, what is your, tell us a little bit more about your
So
philosophy and your structure and how
so
you do this.
a lot of it came. So I was in business management for a long time, and that's where I learned a lot of the hard lessons as well. And I burned myself out, and was at a point where I was, so sick I couldn't work. Doctors couldn't figure out, what the heck was the problem with me and such. And I ended up going to this one particular doctor. He was a naturopathic doctor, and he goes, "Man, your body is completely burned out." He goes, "I don't even know how you got in here. I don't know how you mustered the energy to walk into my office." He goes, "Because the guy spent like 3 hours with me in one day, and I just kept looking at my watch, going, are you sure?" I'm like, "Are we done yet? Are we done yet?" He goes, "No." He says, "We got a long way to go." Because I need to get you at least to a point where you can leave, and I'll see you again in a week. And and one of the things that he told me at that particular point, and which again is another lesson that I'll never forget, is that he says, "From what I see, your body has been telling you to slow down. It's been telling you something for a very long time, and you just wouldn't listen. Now it just made you listen."
Mm.
And it hit me like a ton of bricks, because I'm like, yeah. I said, yeah. I said, it was always that headstrong push forward, ignore the pain, just go, 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 go. What
Were you
was
physically like on the edge of like stress tests, like cardio
Yeah, so
irregularities? Would you
yeah,
say?
so I was at the point where my liver was failing,
Ooh.
and it wasn't from drinking, because I really don't drink very much. It wasn't from drinking. What he had done is he had done what's called a genetics test, and which basically tells you this is your body. Okay, so when you go to a regular doctors, they're going to just assume that your body is the same as everyone else's. And so he did a very specific test. It's like, this is your body. This is how it's made. This is how it's built from the day you were born. So nothing was broken. They just didn't work the same way as what a regular liver would do. So in other words, he equates the liver. He's like, when because it's what filters your blood and cleans your system out. It's the hardest working organ in your entire body. And he goes, so because your liver just doesn't have the ability to, it cleans your system out, but it doesn't have the ability to purge the toxins that it takes out of your blood and get it out of your body. And so what happens is, like, because your liver is like an overflowing bathtub. So all of that stuff that it's been cleaning out of your system for so long is now in your body. It's in your bloodstream. It's in everywhere. And he goes, and it's your liver's failing. Your liver can't simply do it anymore. So, and I wasn't seeing straight. I was sleeping 16 hours a day. I would sit in a chair and I just felt like I was empty, literally, like I was just like an empty vessel. There was just like nothing inside me. Mm-hmm. And I'm just going, is this like what it's like to die? I mean, you just didn't, there was no pain. There was just nothing. And so I ended up leaving my job, and I just said, I can't come back. I said, I have got to take, a break. I've got to figure this out. And part of what attributed to that sudden change also was that I had mercury poisoning. And oddly enough, that mercury actually came from the fillings in my teeth.
Well, oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. So back when I was a kid, they used mercury to make the fillings. Remember the people with silver teeth?
Yep.
And such. That was mercury. And and it was just breaking down, and it was just bleeding into my system as well. So he goes, that's what kicked everything off. He goes, you were still doing all this, but now your body simply can't handle this. So I ended up having all the fillings taken out, and which helped a lot. And then I went on a very, very strict diet of not just a food diet. I had to, because of the way my liver in particular was, I had to be careful of the environment that I was in, because the liver also cleans what you breathe in. So whatever you breathe in goes into your lungs, gets absorbed, and goes into your system, and then ultimately will end up going through the liver for it to clean. So, I had to stay away from areas that had a lot of smoke or noxious gases and things like that. I just had to kind of keep my environment clean, keep the food that I ate very, very clean. And I ultimately, and then I go on cleanses about 3 times a year, which are they're a real stringent cleanse where I don't eat any food. I just drink juice.
So you do a big detoxification fast
3 times a year. Yeah.
Okay.
How long?
Well, for the first few years, I did it for 30 days at a time.
Holy Moses!
And now I've kind of I've gotten everything so much under control that now I only do them. I'll do it for like 10 days.
So is your liver
30
working
days.
fine now?
Yeah.
30 days.
Yeah. So to answer your question about my liver, so when we were trying to figure all this out, he actually sent me to a liver specialist, and they did a CAT scan of my liver. And because then we were starting to, medicine is just a process of elimination. And he's just like, man, he goes, you might have cancer in your liver. He goes, everything should be working, and it's not. So I go in and they do this CAT scan of my liver, and the specialist is like, well, you got some fat buildup in there, and you got this and this. He goes, but there's no cancer and like that. He goes, your liver is just inflamed. And so went back to my other doctor, and so he says, well, I'm going to pull out my final weapon, and I'm like, what's that? He goes, it's called a master cleanse. And I'm like, okay. I said, what is it? He goes, it's really hard to do. And I'm like, that's fine. I said, I'm pretty driven. and I want to get this solved. And you create this. There's a book about this, but you create this juice, and that's all you do. You drink this juice, lunch or breakfast, lunch, and dinner. That's it, and maybe tea. And so what that does is that the way this is designed is that this juice, your liver has to do nothing. So it literally gives it all this time to heal. It doesn't have to cleanse, clean, or anything because it's not having to. You're just drinking pure stuff. So there's nothing for it to clean out, and so it just gives it this chance to push everything out of the liver, and at the same time, the liver can heal itself. So I did all this. I go back to answer your question, Zach. I go back to this liver specialist. He does another CAT scan, and he literally came into the office. He goes, "I don't know what you did, but I've never seen this before. I had to go back to make sure I had the right records." He goes, "Your liver is right now perfectly clean. It's perfectly healthy." He says, "It looks like it's."
Didn't you just do what he told you to do?
Well, it wasn't the liver specialist that told me to do this. It was the other doctor.
Okay.
So the liver specialist, I'm like, "No, I did this cleanse, and he's like, I need you to tell me everything about this. He goes, because I've never seen this before. And I said, "Well, I'll tell you one thing. One, I lost 25 pounds in 30 days.
Yeah, we got to get to that, Ross.
Yeah.
Like, I'm buying the hydration part. I'm buying the nutrient part. But if that is truly, like, I'm guessing primarily plant-based, well, yeah, fruits and vegetables, calorically, even 3 of those a day cannot be over 1,000 calories.
No. So, yeah. So what it is
So you are just losing rapid weight, too.
Yeah, you are. And you'll put it back, too. Not all of it. Like maybe half of it will come back. So every time
is done, like,
oh yeah,
great.
Yeah. So what you're drinking is you start with a gallon of distilled water, and then you're going to add. I can't give you the exact amount of everything because my wife usually makes a concoction for me. But then you're going to add pure lemon juice. You're going to add maple syrup.
Yep.
Pure maple syrup, not the the corn syrup based maple syrup, and then maybe a little bit of cayenne pepper, and that's all you're going to drink. You're going to have that and water, and you're going to do that.
So it's not even like a smoothie.
No.
We're just talking literally like
exactly.
So the only calories you have is from the maple syrup.
Correct.
So you're essentially for 30 days.
You're in
Will Ferrell from Elf.
You're in ketosis for 30 days.
Well,
no.
How do you do that with just eating pure glucose though?
Because there's no carbs.
No. You're wrong, Zach.
You're going to have to be honest with you, I can't answer that question because I don't know because I couldn't figure it out either. But you're in pure ketosis.
Well, they call it the lemonade diet.
Yeah.
Or the lemonade diet.
Listen, I'm just saying scientifically,
yeah,
ketosis is typically achieved through the absence of carbohydrates. So
Correct.
It's an all fat protein or intermittent fasting for, I think it's 36 hours or above.
Correct.
Now what he's saying is this cleanse, the only nutritional caloric value is actual and I don't know if it's glucose, fructose, whatever the syrup is, but it's sugar based, so it is carbs.
Yeah.
But it's not much.
Right.
It's not much.
It's just enough. It's just enough.
You are Elf for 30 days.
Yeah.
On a pure syrup diet.
Yeah.
That's
just to kind of give you an idea, you don't exercise while you're doing this because there's just not enough there to give you that energy. There's a couple of times when I take my dogs for a walk and all of a sudden I'm just like, oh shit, because all of a sudden I'm just like, okay, I just going for a walk with the dogs, I overdid it, and my glucose is dropping really, really fast. And so I just, just kind of overdid. I should have taken a drink with me or something, but
you're right, Derek. There's 13 grams of carbs in maple syrup.
Yeah. So it's not much. You're going to burn through it. I mean, really, really fast. And that's why
you're not getting any energy from protein or fat either.
No, you're not.
Once your body burns through that, it's got your own fat stores at that point, and so
that is correct.
It's ketosis, right, where it's actually using that as energy.
Yeah.
That's insane.
So
That's wild.
somebody actually said, "This is, did you get cancer or something?" The first time I did this, are you sick? Do you get cancer? And he goes, I'm like, no, why? I said, I feel great. It's like, you've lost all this weight, and it's like, no,
Oh,
this is why I feel better. And
you know what? That would probably be good for like onset cancer patients. I mean, cancer
mhm.
is a cancerous cell is fed by nutrients, right?
Well, by
I mean,
sugar, by the glucose, yeah.
and anyone ever just said like don't eat for a month?
I,
See what happens. I mean,
well,
this is like nature's chemotherapy.
I
I
Well,
mean,
mean, like we're gonna starve your cells.
it
it's
really
kind of
is.
funny. Kind of funny you guys are talking about it because right now we're in the holy month, and many people are fasting for the
Yeah.
month.
Yep.
It's a big fasting month, and I have friends. I have never done it only because I'm on meds right now, and until I get off the meds, which I'm working towards, I don't know that a fast would be very smart for me because
No.
oof, that would make my sugar crash. Anyway, but I know people who did a 30-day a liquid fast. They
Mm,
drank only water or like bone broth or
right.
something.
Yeah.
They lose a ton of weight. They feel fantastic. Their body gets a full cleanse. There's nothing left in them.
Yeah.
It's
So,
almost like drinking that stuff they give you before a colonoscopy. I mean, it just cleans you out.
well, yeah. I mean, you know,
Can't be
that's
much
actually,
to clean out after the
it's
first
really
couple
funny you should
days.
say that, because the reason that the reason for the cayenne pepper is what the cayenne pepper is going to do. The first effect that it's going to have is it's going to actually remove part of that mucus lining in your stomach. It's going to remove it.
Uh
Just
huh.
going to, and it's going to go out. And then it's going to start working on your intestines. It's going to just start pulling stuff out of the ins that's been caked up onto your intestines, because you have the little villi that's on all the insides of your intestines, and that's what's
Yes.
absorbing all the nutrients out of the food. Okay, well, the way that the American diet is, a lot of those things, there's so much stuff that's packed. Those things aren't even down anymore. They're just packed. So we're not even absorbing nutrients out of the food that we're eating, because we've just caked all this, with so much flour and all that kind of stuff that we have into our diets. So I'm on this cleanse, and I can, without trying to gross anybody out, I can only tell you that 2 weeks into doing this, solid food was still coming out of me. Okay.
Really?
And this is stuff that's just in my system, that has been in my system.
Now, is this where you just have a long black rod of stool?
No, not necessarily. Well, in the beginning, you kind of
I'm
do.
trying to give us a visual
Yeah.
here. You know,
Yeah.
this
So you
this
kind of.
podcast is meant for
So
vivid
this
imagery,
is
Ross.
okay. So I've turned a lot of people onto this
We're
program.
trying to be controversial. Let's hear it.
Exactly.
Draw a
So
picture and show it.
so I've talked to a lot of people that into getting onto this, and I'm just like, okay, I says, I'm going to give you a couple of rules. I says, rule number one. I says, you want to start this on your days off, because those are the hardest. The first 3 days are the hardest. I said, but they're also the most explosive. Let's put it that way. I go,
Yep.
two, you're always going, wherever you go, you're going to have a change of clothes with you. Okay. And number three, which is the most important part, and everybody needs to really understand this. You might think it's a fart. And I am not kidding. And so you just have to keep all of that in mind.
I
Um,
remember those days.
but after,
Oh,
yeah, right, for a different reason. So, I mean, when I started kind of researching this, when I was doing it, I'm just like, this is amazing. I found that this has been around for a long time. And there's a lot of movie stars in Hollywood. This is how they prep themselves for roles. If they have to lose weight really fast, this is how they do it. And
well, yeah. I mean, it's you're gonna lose weight for sure.
you're going to lose it. And you're going to lose it fast. It'll stay off for a little bit, but you'll probably bring about half of it back.
Essentially,
Uh,
you're going to shart your guts out.
yeah. Yes, you
Same,
Sounds
are.
good.
Yes, you are.
same.
However, the word cleanse has got a bad connotation to it, because a lot of people have done cleanses and they've done them wrong. Or they've
Right.
done cleanses and it's been some concoction that some nutrient company came up with. Like I said, the first 3 days are the hardest, because that's when you're transitioning from solids to liquid and such. And your
Right.
body is still used to all those solids. And if you get through the third day, you're gold. If you can get to day 10, then you're just going to go, well, what if I could do 11? and then I wonder if I could do 12.
Right.
And my wife beat my record. I was at 30 days, and she went to 32. She's very competitive, but I mean, she loves it. And you actually have more energy.
Mm-hmm.
You are thinking so clear.
Mm-hmm.
Your vision is better. Your hearing is better. And
Well,
you can smell a dog
like
fart a mile away.
Well,
You can
you know,
smell everything. And
in our American uh, ideology of eating, it's graze every 10 minutes, and
yeah,
I'm guilty of this. So just background, Ross.
sure.
I've been a very strong proponent of intermittent fasting for 13 or 14 years now, even going for
Yeah,
4 year periods of 20 hours off, 4 hours
sure.
eat,
Yeah,
like for years, right? And now my rule has been for a long time, and it still is, which makes it harder for me now that I'm home more. It's always been I don't eat at work. Like
right. Yeah,
I wake up, if I'm in the office at 7, I come home at 4 or 5. I'm not eating until
right.
5 or 6, whatever. But now I'm home 5 days a week and have been for a while. So now it's like at home you just naturally want to graze and that kind of stuff. But I can tell you, so many people have looked at me in so many weird ways over the years, which naturally they do if you're kind of part of that group. But people ask me like, why don't you eat? And I go, listen, when you intermittent fast, you once it's out of you, at least you don't shit, you're not tired, you're alert,
Mm-hmm.
you don't waste time eating food.
Yeah.
I mean, seriously, intermittent fasting during the workday was, I mean, I would say that was my, when they used to call me the machine, that was probably the superhuman secret about it, beyond being driven, the mental clarity, the sharpness,
Mm-hmm.
not dwelling on food, getting used to your body not running constantly on sugar. And when we take our bodies off of that constant insulin surge,
Mm-hmm.
we naturally heal, get better growth hormone response, and just have a better state of all those senses physically too. So it's,
Yeah.
I mean, your skin gets better, right? I
Everything
mean,
does.
there's so many things that happen that regardless if you go hardcore 30-day cleanse, a 12-hour fasting period,
Right.
4 days of fasting, 3 days of normal, there's a good element anyone can find in it
Yeah.
for so many different reasons.
Let me
Well,
ask
and,
you a
and and
question.
along with that, so one of the other things that we did as well is so this the first visit that I had with this particular doctor. He lays me out on the table and he starts pushing on my abdomen, and I just freaking screamed. And he's just like, he goes, man, he goes, your abdomen is so inflamed. And so then the first thing he ordered for me were allergy tests. And I got a list 2 pages long of food that I'm either allergic to or sensitive to that I
Really?
had been eating all the time.
Sure.
So then you have that on top of everything is that my body's fighting those sensitivities, and such, which is also bringing your energy down. Because a lot of us are eating food that we're just not designed to eat. And I'm not even talking the ones with chemicals. I'm talking plants. I'm talking there's fish that I can't eat. I mean, things that I love, beans, sesame seeds. I mean, all this kind of stuff that I'm just like, nope, 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 nope. And but there's so much stuff that everybody is, just there. We're just consuming without turning that damn package over and actually looking at what's inside.
And what did you come to that? And sorry if I missed
That's
this if
right.
I wasn't listening, but did you come to that through a process of elimination, or did you strip everything and build up one at a time? A lot of people do elimination diets to find
No, no, we did a blood test.
health.
This
Oh, awesome.
That was
Okay,
all done with
so
a blood test. But even there's things that don't show up on blood tests too. For
but
example,
even with the blood test too, what does show up? How do you know it's that food necessarily? Is it like
they,
correlated to
there's special testing for all this stuff. Just like
that's
it's just
hocus
like when you
pocus?
it's just like when you have you ever had an allergy test on your on
I
your
don't think
on
so.
your
No,
arm? Okay, so what
no.
they do for an allergy test, your basic allergy test, they'll do a grid pattern on your forearm, literally little squares.
Okay,
And then they have this, and then in each of so you have these little checkerboard squares on your arm. And then in this square, they're going to poke you with something, and this one, something else, something else, something else, and all these things. and then they just sit back and they just wait
Look at the reaction,
and they look
right?
at the reaction. Okay.
And then they can probably test the skin somehow.
Correct. So with a blood
The
test,
pH and
they do it similar, but
okay.
in a bigger fashion. So they just, but they're not,
Yeah.
like my wife is allergic to planet Earth. We did her test. It's just like, seriously.
Everything just
Oh yeah,
like,
it's just like, yeah, I'm
her
just
skin
like,
was
crap.
her skin was jumping off her arm.
It was like,
Swole red.
exactly. So, but mine was specifically just for food. And so what they can do is they'll take your blood samples and then they'll, I guess they just run it through some sort of a spectrometer of some sort and look for reactions. But there's some things that just didn't show up. Like I can eat, here's a really weird one for you. I can eat egg yolks, but I can't eat egg whites.
Really?
I can
prefer that.
I can eat sesame oil, but I can't eat sesame seeds.
Okay.
I can't eat any kind of a bean.
That sucks.
I know. And so there's just a lot of odd things. There's a lot of fish or things in a fish family that I can't eat. There's like yellowfin tuna and bluefin tuna are my favorites. Can't have those, but I can have albacore tuna.
Probably high in mercury, aren't they?
Well, they can be. They can be, but I can have albacore.
Albacore certainly isn't.
Yeah. So it's it's all these different oddities, and I mean, if it were up to me, I mean, I would say that everyone should have these tests. They should be some way that they can be made cheaper to be done, and everybody should have this. And I think we would solve 50% of the problems that people have with the energy. Now, for example, just to give you an idea, when I'm talking that someone has an allergy to a food or a sensitivity to a food, it doesn't mean anaphylactic shock. It just means that your body's it doesn't react with your body, and your body's going to expend an incredible amount of energy trying to fight off what it sees as an infection. So that's why my abdomen was so inflamed, is because I was eating, I was eating all this stuff. And my whole digestive system was just inflamed because I was putting stuff in it that it was hypersensitive to. But what's sesame seeds, it's like taking a sleeping pill.
Really?
Yeah. Egg whites, it's like taking a sleeping pill. Now, further examination and taking this even further, and I am kind of a research freak, and I will double blind and A, B, C, D, F test it. I mean, just to the max. Just one, because it's me, but two, because I'm just really curious. But like now, my son has a little farm, and he raises chickens. I can eat the eggs of those chickens, yolk and whites, without a thing. It's only the store-bought chicken eggs that I can't eat.
So it's not the white; it's the nutrients. The white
it's
is
something we don't know. So
from commercial farming.
From commercial farming, it's probably something with the hormones that they give the chickens, or something. They don't. I mean, because a lot of times they feed chickens other chickens. I mean, you just don't know.
So are you pretty make America healthy again? Like kind
Absolutely.
of conscious in terms of. I mean, think about I think I mentioned this before on other shows, Zach, but like the average age of colon cancer, right, over the last 2 decades.
Mm-hmm.
What are we talking, from the early 60s to the early or mid 40s now, right? Where it's like, I'm going to be 40 this year and I haven't got a colonoscopy, and I'm like, I think I'm behind the 8 ball. Even eating healthy per se, just anything processed, packaged, commercially done, and I'm not like this holistic person.
Yeah.
But I'm not naive enough to not understand that. I mean, we're literally being poisoned.
I'm
right down to the lettuce you buy at Walmart. It's poison. It's literal poison.
Well, I mean, if you look at all the chemicals, that are put into it, you look at the fact that the way their growing methods are, you might have a head of lettuce, but there's no nutrients in it.
Yeah, there's no magnesium left in it.
Have you? I mean, I have my own.
People wonder why they have deficiencies, because there is no more nutrients, because the soil's devoid of it, because we just commercial farm the snot out of it.
That's why I have my own garden at home.
Yeah,
exactly.
And,
that's all real.
It really, and it makes a huge difference. And I honestly believe.
I bet you the eggs your son gives you taste way better.
They're really good. They're really good.
I mean, I have. Listen, I work outside. I work in people's property and stuff. And I love going in someone's backyard and there's, they have chickens or something. I'm like, oh, how many eggs do you guys
Are
get?
you the chicken snatcher, the Central Florida chicken
I
snatcher?
am not. They give me the eggs, and because my dogs eat eggs on every meal, and
Good.
and I love eggs, and there is such a difference in the
Yeah.
taste.
So that's why you don't have to pay $8 a dozen.
Well,
You
but
just
I
steal
mean,
them from people.
but that's still that translates into just the vegetables that you grow at home because they have
Absolutely.
so much flavor and you could just taste the nutrients. I love the carrots that we grow, and I'm not a carrot fan, but the
Oh, I love
carrots that we
carrots.
grow,
Yeah.
like you could just taste the nutrients in them. And in all honesty, a lot of times the reason that there's such an obesity problem, I mean, granted we have sugar and high fructose corn soup and stuff like that, but also a lot of the food is so devoid of nutrients, the body's just saying, I just keep eating because I'm not getting what I need.
Hmm.
And I really believe that it would be cheaper if we had quality vegetables. It would be cheaper for people to buy quality vegetables than all the boxed garbage that they eat. They say, oh, but this is cheaper. I'm like, no, actually, if you work it all out and you do the math, and I've done the math, I said, it's cheaper to eat less, better, but better. Better
So
Yeah, we
food.
live in a
so let me ask
society that
you.
doesn't take into account landed costs.
Correct.
Talking about total costs of healthcare,
Yeah.
diet, nutrition, whatever you want to call it, purchasing,
Yeah.
importing versus domestic. Like we live in a society that has become so gratified over the years that we took like a commercial practice of not looking at a landed cost and we apply it to our life where we're like, what's cheap now? Okay, well, a $2 cheeseburger at McDonald's is cheaper now. It's more calories now, but it has no nutrients, and eventually enough of those will give you some type of
Exactly. Yeah.
disease, cancer, whatever it may
So
be, and is going to cost you in the system just an astronomical amount of resources, not only time and money, but
Hmm.
just strain,
That's right.
right?
Yeah.
And obviously there's genetics and there's things that can and can't be avoided and but if every
oh,
sorry guys, I was getting a call coming in, and had their eggs, all that type of stuff, um, dude, you would
Hmm.
a lot would be different.
Yeah. And that's how and I'm hoping that, some of this stuff does pass I know you didn't want to talk politics, but some of this stuff will eventually pass in the
Sure.
government because, somebody's got to put their foot down and somebody's got to step up and say, this is what needs to happen.
but let
I
me
my approach to health is a lot different than most, but not all. When I walk into a new doctor's office, I have a very long conversation. Well, in the short 15 minutes I have with the guy, I have a conversation saying, "Here's what you need to understand. You work for me. You are my advisor. Okay, I will listen to what you say, but I'm not necessarily going to heed your warnings." And I'll give you a perfect example. Is I have high cholesterol. I've always had high cholesterol, and I can do a cleanse for 30 days. Do my cholesterol test prior to that, do my cholesterol afterwards. It's the same,
yeah,
and I haven't eaten any food.
right.
Okay, so my cholesterol is my cholesterol, and I'm a proponent that cholesterol is really gotten a bad rap. So, have this doctor takes my cholesterol, and he's like, "You have really high cholesterol. Your cholesterol's getting higher." And I'm like, "Okay." He goes, "You need to go on statins." I'm like, "No, I'm not going on statins." He goes, "You have to go on statins. You're going to die." And I'm like, "Nah, I don't think I'm going to die." I says, "You're going to need to prove to me, besides that one metric, only one metric that you're looking at, that I need to go on statins for the rest of my freaking life,"
Right.
which is also something that's going to dry my brain out because my brain is mostly cholesterol, right? Okay. So he said, "Well, the only thing that you can do is you can have a heart scan." And I'm like, "Sign me up." He goes, "Well, your insurance doesn't cover it." I'm like, "Dude, I don't care about my insurance. Obviously, you're not paying attention, And he says, "Well, it's like $300." I'm like, "Sign me up. Just make this happen." So I go to this clinic and they do this. It's just like a super intense MRI just on your heart. And so I get an email back from the doctor the next day along with my scan. He goes, yeah, you don't have one bit of cholesterol or buildup in your entire heart. He goes, you don't need to go on statins. I'm like, I know.
Yep.
I said, I know. I appreciate you admitting that. And I said, but yeah, I said, I know.
Is that like oversimplifying it? Like if you were to group fat altogether instead of saying this is subcutaneous or visceral, what's
Correct.
you don't have visceral fat over your liver, so we're not talking about issues. Is that what they're doing there? Just saying, oh, your numbers are high, so therefore
Well,
you're in a bad state.
there's a couple different things. So this is the same thing when people are talking about blood glucose as well. Okay. So when they say that this is the range of blood glucose, this is not the human range. This is the average range of everybody in, let's say, United States. So as our society gets bigger and bigger and glucose levels go higher and higher, that range will now start to shift
Right.
to a higher range. I'm like, no. I said, you don't put me in this category. You put me back in this category for humans. And the cholesterol is the same thing. So as everybody else's cholesterol may or may not get higher and higher, then they're going to just keep moving the goalposts. I'm like, that's not medicine. I said, that's just playing the odds.
Well,
But we have this system where it's just, you got 15 minutes with a doctor.
One size fits all.
One size fits all. Exactly.
What do we have to react that's broken?
so same thing with me. I went and had my blood work done, went to my cardiologist. He says, you got high cholesterol.
Right.
First of all, it wasn't high. It was in the higher in the range, but it wasn't high. He said, but we see, there's a little bit, you can see stuff on your your heart, whatever. We want to put you on statins. And I said, no.
Right.
I'm on enough medicine that I'm trying to get rid of. Because after brain surgery, I had the stroke and everything else, and they put me on all kind of stuff. My whole body got whacked.
Sure.
So they were trying to fix it. So they want to put me on statins. I said, how about I come back in 6 months, let me try it naturally to correct the issue. And if I don't, then I'm going to sit down and listen to you. We're going to talk. He said, okay, let's do it. First time I had a doctor say that. Normally they want to argue with me. He said, okay, do you have a plan? I said, yes, I do. He said, okay, when you come back, tell me what your plan is, whether you win or lose, and then we'll go from there.
Right.
I did some research, found this stuff called red rice yeast and CoQ10 and super high dose of fish oil.
Yep.
You have the craziest supplement pantry ever, Zach.
I do.
Coming from a guy who's double blind, tested and researched every supplement known to man previous fitness life.
Yep.
You have the most Mac Daddy supplement pantry.
I do. Good for you.
That I've ever seen.
Yeah. I spend thousands of dollars.
We do, and we try and stay healthy. So I doubled up my CoQ10. I doubled up my red rice yeast.
Yeah.
And I found a huge dose of fish oil. It's like 3,600 milligrams or whatever. I went back 6 months later. They did the heart scan, did all the blood work, and they're like, "Well, you're right. You did it. You don't need to. You don't need to go. What did you do?" And I told them. They're like, "That a boy." Literally, the doctor was like, "Good for you."
Yeah. I
said, "Why?" The problem I had was if I was just some schmuck who didn't know, okay, doc, I'll take whatever you take. And then I've been in people's houses and they have 85 freaking prescription pills. I'm like, how do you even know what you're taking? Like before I had brain surgery, I was on gabapentin, Epital, and Lyrica because it was a bad nerve that was in my brain that was causing basically sciatic in my face, and they can't give you pain pills for it. They give you anti-seizure medicine. Well, gabapentin for me was a weight gainer. I gained 60 pounds on it. The Lyrica, anyway, towards the end, before I had the surgery, they told me we can't give you any more medicine. You were on the highest dosage allowed by the FDA of all your meds. I was on 3,800 milligrams of gabapentin a day, 800 milligrams of Epital, and 200 of Lyrica.
And this is why you cannot be insured.
I do have good insurance. Stop it. You just couldn't afford me. That's why.
Ross, my record as a life insurance broker was, I think, 26 medications. Someone's current list.
I can't imagine.
And I'm thinking, and they're laughing the whole time, and I'm like, I'm still going to make this work, whatever.
So I
But
got off all that, but after the brain
it's just
surgery,
it's sad that that's where we've gone. That doctor Zach who said, "What did you do? Great job." Shortly after he was assassinated by the drug pharma rep. I mean, like it's all about how do we plug the hole in the dike? How do we bring you through more tests?
I
How do we?
researched Stanton, and that
It's
stuff is garbage.
it's disgusting.
It is horrible.
Yeah.
I mean, the stuff I'm on is garbage, but it is what it is. I'm trying to get off of it. They've got me off of a lot of it. So,
But
thank
you've got
God.
the mindset to do it though. So and
Right.
that's 80%. So because so many people just follow the instructions. And I talked to this one woman, this is years ago. And I was doing sales training for this one company. And this one woman come in, and it was a mattress company that I was training their salespeople.
Right.
And this woman comes in, and she needed to get this bed, that's adjustable base and all this kind of stuff for her husband. And so I'm like, oh, I said, well, is your husband here? And she's like, no. And I said, well, what's wrong with your husband? She's, well, he has neuropathy in his legs, and they're gonna be amputated in 2 weeks.
Ooh.
And I'm like, okay. And I says, well, is that the last option? Well, that's what the doctor said. Well, of course, he's going to get paid $20,000 for it. And she goes, and then next year they're going to take off his arms. And I'm just like, that there's other solutions, don't you? And she was just like, that's what the doctor said. I'm like, yeah, I understand that, but that there's other solutions for this. And she goes, nope. She goes, that's what the doctor said. And if you go back and you just look how society has been conditioned that doctor is king. The doctor is the doctor is it. I mean, look at all the problems that we had with the jab, a few years ago. So many people got it, but you had that one small group that was fighting it. I was one of them. And come lo and behold, the doctors were all basically threatened. You either, push this on everybody, or you're going to lose
Look
your
at
license.
how many unknown interactions, right? Without being a conspiracy. Zach and I are proudly jab free in this
We are
great
Yeah.
state.
pureblood.
So
But also in Florida, you also get blessed with COVID like 7 times a year. So
Yeah, we get it all the time.
yeah.
you have so much natural immunity. But like why do you
I
think
think
so
I've
many
had it 4 times
bodybuilders
now.
died in those years, being on a high testosterone, high cholesterol, God knows whatever else
Yeah.
going orally and intra muscularly into their system that they never had problems with before. When you combine these things and like you never know what you don't know, and
Yeah.
like we learned from that just how terrible a thing it was to commercially mandate
Mm-hmm.
pharmaceutical procedures. That's like coming from the son of a registered nurse, immunized his whole life, strong believer in the flu shot. Doesn't matter, like just the way that went about was like we talked about it with Dr. Greg Adaka too, but we're just like, man, it just spooked me. It was
Yeah.
like, whoa, like at some point, I think that was maybe like a kind of a critical moment in time where, and maybe people have reverted back, but I think that was a moment in medicine where people are like, I don't know how much I do trust the doctor right now.
Yeah.
Like I'm kind of like I'm scared, but like, are you scaring me more for Pfizer to have a record year? I mean, what is going on?
Mm-hmm.
I've never seen like it's just crazy thing. We don't talk about it. We don't get people offended with politics and stuff, and
Yeah.
we're cool about that. Everyone has their own thoughts, but that was just a prime example of
We're cool about it because we got a show taken down.
infallible belief. We're not going to get this one taken down. We're not gonna do it,
I'm
but-
making sure I'm not saying any of the trigger words for you.
Don't say the C word.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
we had this infallible belief in our for-profit medical system that really failed a lot of people.
Yeah.
It wasn't just that moment in time. It's
well-
been going on for decades.
Well, that's
Well,
that's what I was about to say. Is that it was just blatant there, but
Right.
this has been progressively getting worse and worse. So, my whole thing. Let's go back to talking about cholesterol for a second. Is that we all know that cholesterol is an important nutrient for the body, or nutrient. It's a component of the body, and so you see people who have this buildup of cholesterol or plaque in their arteries. Okay, and that plaque um, is cholesterol going to those parts of the artery because that part of the artery is inflamed. And so, because when the body has an injury inside, it sends cholesterol there as a band-aid to patch it up. Okay, and then, but the inflammation continues, so it still keeps signaling to the brain, send more cholesterol, and it just starts to build up. But nobody talks about what's causing the inflammation. Take away the inflammation, and the plaque will just fall off. So there's there's a test that I have done once a year. It's called a C-reactive protein test. Are you familiar with that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so the C-reactive protein test for your listeners, it basically measures the amount of inflammation in your body. Okay, and basically the test goes from 0 to 10, and 0 being the best. And mine is pretty much always registered at 0.25 to 0.5 regularly. If it goes any higher, then that tells me there's inflammation in my body. There's a problem. It's starting. That's why I just constantly I'm always having this thing done. And I have gone to doctors' offices where they say, no, we don't need to do that. And I'm like, it's a preventative test. I says, this is so that this is my first warning.
They hate preventative tests.
Yeah, exactly.
They used to look at me cross-eyed when I wanted a biannual full blood hormone profile for $700, and I'm like, what is your problem? I've never used insurance for a medical claim in my life. You should be paying for this shit.
Thank you.
I'm sitting here like, how do I primarily take care of my body and my hormones as a growing young man?
Right.
And you're looking at me like I'm some kind of whack job.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why Florida's so great, by the way, Ross. In Florida, you just walk into a men's clinic and you're like, hey, I'll have this, and that I'll have all this blood work for $200. And they're like, okay.
Yeah.
But like, it's crazy whenever you want to do something preventative.
Yeah, I
The
know.
reality is, if it was not for profit in any sense, it would probably be seen as something that's like, wow, this guy like cares about his body.
Right.
You're going to save me so much pain down the road, including yourself and me.
And money.
Fantastic. I totally support that. Let's go do that. Oh, by the way, insurance kicks in 50% incentive for that because that actually saves them costs.
Yeah.
So
Isn't that magical?
What's your thoughts?
Statement?
I got two
I'll probably
questions
get kicked
for you.
off YouTube for that. Zach.
Yeah, thank you.
Like, come on, man. Like, that is not rocket science. That is just science.
So here's two questions because we're down the rabbit hole of better living. Obviously, the best way is your self-growing. Your own garden, your own chickens, and so on and so forth. But what about these stores that are coming out that are supposed to be natural?
Yeah.
I don't want to name any of them, but there's a big company that's out of your state that owns one of them.
Yeah.
And I mean, are they comparable or like we have our grocery store down here, Publix, which is, we love Publix, don't we, Derek?
What store are you talking about?
What's the big store online? You can buy anything you want. They own a grocery store.
Well, Amazon, yeah.
Okay.
So,
Whole Foods versus like Publix organic or their Greenwise, whatever.
I think the same rules apply. Read the package.
Okay.
I mean, it really isn't rocket science. It's just read the package. What are you putting in your body?
Yeah, because I don't know. We don't shop. I don't shop at Whole Foods or the other.
Well, I mean, Whole Foods. I mean, nowadays it's not what it used to be. When Whole Foods started, it was really Whole Foods, and then it kind of got industrialized. That's a good way to put it. So I mean, you don't have to have a garden in your backyard. It'd be nice.
I would like one,
pots of gardens or whatever. Container gardening is very popular. It's very easy, but it's more of you have to look at what you're when you're in that drive-through. There is nothing that you're going to order in that drive-through that's going to do you any good. It's going to fill you up, kind of. But you're going to be hungry an hour later because there's no nutrients there. So it's going to be, your body's going to be yearning for something more. or it's going to give you that quick rush because there's so much glucose, or not glucose, so much sugar and things like that is just
Right.
in everything. They even put sugar in cigarettes
Really?
to make them more addictive.
So
That's why they're so good.
when I was a kid, I don't know if this is true
I haven't had
rumor or
one in
not.
14 years.
When I started smoking, I smoked Marlboros, and they said that there was chocolate in Marlboros, and that's why Marlboros were the most addictive cigarette out there.
Well, that was a lie.
I've never heard that one before. It wouldn't surprise me.
That's just something they told you, Zach.
I don't know. I smoke them. I like them.
But I think the one of the biggest problems is okay. Zach, let me ask you a question I wanted to ask you a minute ago.
Please.
So you went through all of that rigmarole as far as the CoQ10 and all that kind of stuff to get yourself back into shape. Okay, but did your doctor give you that list of things that you need to take?
No.
Why?
Well,
why didn't he?
As my wife always says, why do you think they're called a doctor's practice?
Yeah, exactly.
Because they practice on you.
So, and that's the thing. That's the part that gets me.
And I was going to bring this up earlier. I have two friends. One is retired for the pharmaceutical, and the other one left the pharmaceutical industry. Pharmaceutical. And they left, and they told me their goal. They had goals, or they had to hit. They wanted the doctor to get the patient on one medicine, and by the time year 3, they had to be on between 8 and 12 medicines.
Yeah. Do you know what started that? Have you ever heard this story?
No. Maybe. I don't know. Well, go ahead and tell me, because maybe I...
In the 1950s.
Sure.
When birth control first came out.
Yes.
That was when they realized that they could give somebody a pill that they'd have to take every single month.
Uh-huh.
That was the beginning of the end. They're just like, they made so much money on a subscription basis kind of a thing.
So this is when pharma was subscription before subscription was subscription?
Yeah. When they realized that, wait a minute, we can give them this prescription every single month and people will do it. And then all of a sudden, every pill became something you need to take every single month. It wasn't,
right,
it wasn't going to be the cure. It was going to be enough to maintain your illness.
Right, because if you got sick back then, they would just give you your
they cured you.
Lasted whatever. Yeah. You took your, you had strep throat. You got your Z-Pack, and you were done.
Done.
Right.
Yeah.
You got your antibiotic. You were cleaned up. Yeah. Absolutely.
So this was the early makings of auto ship.
Pretty close. Yeah. Well, it was when they realized it was more of when they realized that people could be trained to take pills on a regular basis instead of
I have two friends who are from Israel. Israel is a very, I guess, a clean country. I don't know. I've never been there, but they say they call Americans TAPs. TAP. TAP.
What is that?
Well, I've got a headache. Take a pill. Oh, I've got anxiety. Take a pill. I'm nervous. Take a pill. And they say every American, take a pill. Take a pill.
Yeah.
Every commercial they see, take a pill. They're not like that over there.
Mm-hmm.
And it makes sense.
Yeah.
And it's so funny. I am not a doctor, nor am I a scientist, so I don't have any basis other than my belief to say this. Understand that algorithm. But they have gotten people so programmed and trained.
Yeah.
I like, I've never seen more, and it's a lot of this younger generation, and I don't say it in a bad way, but because they've got everybody programmed. Look, if I had an anxiety attack when I was a kid, my dad would have just slapped me and I'd have been fine.
Yeah.
Now everybody's taking 14 different things.
Yeah.
Well, that was before we were TAPs. The greatest generation was the GOI, the GOI. I just made it up.
What is
GOI? That was the get over it.
Get over it, yeah. Rub a little dirt on it.
So anxiety, mental health is extremely real, but the difference
of course it is.
Back then, when you had 6 kids and 3 jobs, you didn't really have a whole lot of time to really even notice what's going on. Certainly, it's just a difference. There's so much nature, nurture.
I remember my aunt. I remember my mom saying my Aunt Stella she passed away a long, long time ago. Your Aunt Stella's in the hospital because she had a nervous breakdown. Well, she didn't. She was an alcoholic, and they were trying to dry her out, and
Right.
that was what they would say. She had a nervous breakdown. You know, I didn't even know what that was. What does that mean, a nervous breakdown? You know, and the mental health is for sure an issue.
Mhm.
Okay, I worked at a psychiatric hospital when I was a kid. My dad worked there. I was on the security team, and as soon as I turned 18, I couldn't start till I was 18. And I came to the realization, though, and it was kind of scary. At 18 years old, I said, these people aren't getting better. They get better for a little while, and then they go off their medicine, or they don't follow the program, and they right back in worse than they were.
Yeah.
And it was back to the, you know, but there was probably, I don't know what the percentage was, but there was probably some of them that did not need to be there, that probably didn't have problems, and they just got stuck in there. Because I know when I was a kid, I was labeled because I have ADHD, I'm hyperactive, I'm all these great things that I used as, I now have turned them into my super strength. But as a kid, I was the annoying little kid who wouldn't shut up and sit still. You know, my dad would smack me around because I wasn't listening or whatever. And they wanted thank God my parents didn't believe in pills. My dad believed in spoil the rod and spare the child, don't spoil the rod. And so they didn't put me on pills, but they wanted to put me on pills.
Yeah.
And I thank God they didn't, because that was, my generation was the start of it, because we started with the Ritalin
Yeah.
because the kids couldn't sit still.
Mhm.
Come to find out, at least for me, I find out that I was not challenged. That's why I was bored.
Right.
You weren't making my brain work. If you made my brain work, once I went to school and I was learning something that I enjoyed, I excelled at it
Yeah.
and did better than most.
Yeah.
But if I was not, or if it was boring or didn't make sense,
Sucked at it.
Yeah.
see you later.
My son has a genius IQ, and he was a C student, and it was only because he was so bored in school.
Most of us,
Every time I went to talk to this, he's just bored. I said, then stimulate him. There was only a couple teachers that he had that knew the trick of, like,
right.
okay, they saw beyond that agenda that they had, and they were able to stimulate him, and he would do really good in those classes. But overall,
My seventh grade, I'll never forget. I don't remember if it was science or what it was, but one of my teachers actually brought in a refrigerator box, cut the back out, and she would put it around my desk because I was a distraction. Instead of trying to teach me and work with me,
yeah,
or I'd get put out in the hallway.
Conform.
I mean, this is all starting to make sense to me, Zach. With
Thank you.
So,
But,
well, it's better to put him in the refrigerator.
can I use this?
That's probably why I am who I am. I was in the refrigerator. But Ross, and I don't say this in a bragging way. I have been tested very high, but most of us who have a higher IQ, we're bored.
Yeah,
we're not challenged,
right?
And we all really, a lot of us just would just turn it off,
right?
Like I used to say, I'm terrible at testing. I'm not, because I have a really great memory. I just don't like testing because I'm bored. It's not challenging me. So I get where your son came from. Yeah. Derek, what were you saying?
I wanted to kind of do a pivot point, and just reading some of your stuff and checking out your channel a little bit, Ross. Here, I'm really interested in your view on thoughts versus reality, programming, and here's why. By the way, because being a self-worth, self-achiever, being a negatively programmed person, kind of a negative reinforcement, fear of my dad. I went through a process starting 6 or 7 months ago of reprogramming, and I used, I'm sure you're familiar, I hope so, Dr. Shad Helmstetter.
Yeah, oh yeah.
For self-talk and reprogramming. It's something I still do, every single day. And I'm a believer in it to an extent of at least getting out of yourself and what you can and can't control, and then understanding that you can do what you can do. And so I guess I just wanted to kind of go there and understand how you use that with some of your consulting, and do you reprogram people? Do you How do you use that? Do
So
you have your
using
own
yeah,
tools?
so
Or?
using the terms programming people make is people get kind of leery on that, but it. I mean, we're all programmed. I mean, if you know, I mean
Sure.
that's why they call televisions programs because you are being programmed. You know, and you can actually what Zach was saying earlier, as far as you know that we take so much medicine, we're just programmed this way. I was like, yeah, it's because you're watching all these commercials which are brilliantly created by armies of psychologists and sociologists to work just perfect. And one of the things that I do with our students is that I'll have them take a commercial, and I said, I want you to watch the commercial, and then I want you to watch the commercial with the sound off, and then I want you to listen to the commercial with your eyes closed, and they're going to hear it, see it, all take it in a different way. And I
Right.
says, and then you blend it all together. And I says, so then you start to hear the words, and then you start to hear the words with a particular type of music. I says, it's all designed to hit you on an emotional level. And emotions are the number one and easiest way
Yes.
to program somebody. So when my partner and I, Gary, when we created metacognitive modulation, we use some of Helmstedter's theories in that
Hmm.
because self-talk is incredibly damaging. So, for example, we don't believe in people doing affirmations. Don't believe it one iota. Okay, because people say, "Well, I do my affirmations every morning." I'm like, "Oh, I said, all right, you do it every morning." I said, "Well, what happens? Like for an hour?" Like, yeah, for doing affirmations for an hour. So, okay, well, what happens the other 23 hours of the day? What's going on there? And they're like, I don't know. I says, because life starts to get in the way. I says, and that's when all that motivation that you started to create, you kind of start to lose it. You have people have their vision boards on the wall, and it's okay. Well, but what happens when you're not in front of your vision board? I says, is it still just as effective? I'm like, well, no.
Right.
I said, well, can you take your vision board with you? Well, no. I said, well, wonder if you could. So, what metacognitive modulation does is it takes what the advertising companies have done and turns it in on itself. So, let's talk about branding, for example. So, when you see McDonald's, do you think of hamburgers?
I don't know. I think of freaking red and yellow and
Okay.
brown.
When you see Coca Cola, do you think of drinking a Coca Cola, or do you think of their TV commercials
I was gonna say with a polar bear.
with a polar bear?
I used
Okay.
to. I feel shared experiences are so weird now.
Yeah. So when you see a Nike commercial, do you think of tennis shoes, or do you think of that guy running down the street at 5 o'clock in the morning?
Yeah, yeah, for
Right.
sure.
Yeah.
Okay, because all of them touch on emotional aspects of you. They're no longer talking
Right.
about the product themselves. They're not tearing it apart. Look at the kind of rubber that we use, and look at the way that the soles are made. They're talking about that emotional level, because that emotional level is going to hit home, and it's going to stick.
Right.
So what we've done is we've created this a process. We call it the infinity process, to where we take your environment. Okay, whether it be your bed where you're sitting at now, Derek, or where Zach is sitting, or where I'm sitting, and I can use any part of my environment, and I've now set it subconsciously to where my environment is now starting to trigger different thought patterns for me. Okay, and those thought patterns are designed to motivate me. Those thought patterns are designed to keep me on track. They're trying to design to keep me in the right mindset, in the right frame of mind, such that they just do it automatically, no matter where I'm at.
Right.
Okay, I could be driving down the street, and the system will just click in subconsciously. You don't even know what's happening. I had one of our students one time. She got in a bad car accident. Somebody cut her off. She lives in California. Somebody cut her off, um, um, totaled her SUV. She calls me up right afterwards. She goes, "You're not going to believe this." And I was like what? And she goes, "I just got in a really bad car accident." And I'm like, "Are you okay?" She goes, "Yeah, I'm fine." I says, "But as soon as it happened, all of my training just kicked in." And I'm like, okay, tell me about this, And she's like, yeah, it just all of a sudden kicked in. And I said, okay, I had this handled, I had this handled, I had this handled. And I says, and I just, I figured out, I called an Uber and I went straight on to finish my goal to get to the destination, which is a seminar that she was putting on. She goes, it all just kind of kicked in. And she goes, I didn't freak out, because we call life as a storm. It's like a hurricane. You guys are familiar with that. Life can be like a hurricane and such. So what we do is like you can't get away from a hurricane, but you can get into the eye of the hurricane and stay there. And then from the eye of the hurricane, you can see the chaos happening around you. I said, and then from the eye of the hurricane, which is what our system does, it keeps you in that place of calmness. It keeps you in the now all the time. Okay, and then from that place, you can choose to interact with the chaos instead of being caught up in the chaos and trying to work your way out of it and such. And this is where, when the big C happened, was when we really, really kicked it into gear, because people were constantly thrown into the chaos, no matter where they were at. They couldn't get out of that storm and such. And then we really kicked it into high gear and just kind of giving people this island. It's like, here, come here. Let me show you how this works. And we were doing it for free. We're just like, people just needed it so badly. It's like, come on, just get here. I said, do this and this and this and this and such. And we were doing these trainings constantly and such. And people are just like, I feel so much better. This is like, I don't have that anxiety. I said, I can focus. I'm not in the storm. And that's when we'd already had almost 8 years of beta testing with it, before we actually threw it out into the public. But that's kind of what we do. And then we teach people this, and there's lots of different levels to it, but even the basic level is enough for the average person just to get control of their life, because so many people feel that they are out of control, that they don't have control, that they are powerless. And that's on purpose. You want to take over, somebody's mind or somebody's life. You just keep them in absolute fear all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then you become the hero. Not me. Not you, but the person who's trying to create this fear and keep you in that sense of anxiety, that sense of fear. You just do that long enough, and then no matter what you offer them, you're the solution. You're the solution. And then I said, I'm your savior. But now they're doing your bidding the way that you want it to happen. And I've looked at what's happened in the last 5 years or so, if not a little bit longer, and such. And that's what I see. I see that people, it's a constant state of turmoil.
Yes.
Constantly.
Well, we've seen that lately too. Like I'm a big, from a commerce standpoint,
Mm-hmm.
I'm a big follower of consumer feelings, trends, and of course
Yeah.
the recent tariffs were kind of a thing that just triggered that, right? We have
Yeah.
something called the VIX score, the volatility of the
Mm-hmm.
indexes based on consumer sentiment and what's going on in the
Right.
markets. And the greatest, I don't remember how long we've been measuring it. It hasn't been super long, a few decades, but there's three moments in time where those things spiked. Normally it's supposed to be around under 13. Under 10 is great. In terms of, finance and consumption and security, boring is fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
You want the world to be the most boring, uneventful place ever. And people get comfy and they find their groove and they settle into, patterns, and they have less to think about external. They don't have to worry about focusing on what's in their control versus not, fear, all those things. And I think it was 2008, 2009 with the
Yeah.
housing crash that
Yep.
VIX score jumped to, for a short period of time, I think it was late '08, to almost 80 points.
Mm-hmm.
And then when we had COVID, the C word, come around like March 2020, we had that jump almost to 60.
Right.
And now this latest, economic, shift, change,
Mm-hmm.
which we believe long term is a great thing. But regardless, in the current moment had spiked that up to, I think it almost hit 60 early this week or late last week. I think it's
Sure.
now a little bit under 30, so it's still high. But I mean, just looking at that and measuring that, I mean, I have to be honest with you. In my retail business, I can believe it or not, I can kind of tell what it's going to be like based on those things. And we have been in a time, for like you said, for the last 5 years, where it's the slightest fart just sets people off,
Yeah.
and you can tell it in their attitudes, how people treat each other, how
Right.
people judge each other, how divided people get when they don't realize how much we have in common. The
Hmm.
crazy stuff that if I think back to 2018, 19, I didn't think about.
Right.
I didn't think about, oh, I'm going to offend someone, or I think about like, oh, something crazy could happen today. It was more like, it was just more boring.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so
Exactly.
I have this craving to be out of this volatility cycle. I want the most boring, uneventful society you could imagine,
Hmm.
just for reasons of
Well, that's when we thrive the most,
things
and
work better.
they just simply do. And I saw in 2020. I mean, obviously, we didn't know what was happening because there was
For
so
sure.
much information that was coming out, and you didn't. It's just like, okay, I'm not. But at the same time, a lot of things that were happening didn't make any sense.
Hmm.
I'm like, this doesn't make sense from a health perspective. Just
Yep.
simply straight from a health perspective. I'm like, no, stay indoors. No, the best place to be is outside in the sun. And
When
it's
you're
like, cl-
running past someone and they have a
oh,
dual mask
oh
on
yeah,
too.
And I was out walking. I walk my dogs every day. I have and well, I have two huskies. They walk me.
You're
Um, you know,
woo!
but we're my wife and I are out there, and people are just like, I'm just like, get over it. And I would be polite. I would
For
veer.
sure.
I would step off the sidewalk and veer around. And I said because
Sure.
it wasn't my dogs they were afraid of. And so I'm just but I was just noticing this tenseness and this fear in everybody. And like I said, a lot of the things that were coming down, I said, this just
Very
doesn't make any
sad.
sense. And my partner and I, we both kind of came to the conclusion at the exact same time. I says, this is a storm. This is a bad storm.
Yep.
And I says, I don't know where it's coming from. I says, but this is being manipulated, and this is being perpetuated. And I says, this is crazy. And
It's like we're in this constant heightened state of
exactly
adrenaline where we're sitting on the edge of our seat,
right.
almost wanting for the next thing to happen just
Yep.
so we can continue. We feel more in control fighting chaos
Yeah.
than
And
focusing on what we do well and enjoy in life, and letting the chaos, like you said, settle in around you, follow the eye, and then when you're ready to plow out of the storm, you plow your way through out of it.
right.
And you may be in that eye for like 10 minutes, you might be in there for like 10 years, but
But
we've almost reached this heightened state of like sickening anticipation for
right. Yeah.
volatility.
So with some of the
It's
exec, some of this, some of the
it's got to
exec,
go.
with some of the executives that we coach as well, is that we teach them how to stay in the eye and remain in the eye. And this is and what you find when you have that type of mindset is that all of a sudden people will just gravitate towards you because they're exactly what you said. They want that calmness.
They want to rock.
They want a rock, exactly, of Gibraltar, and you
They're
become
like
that
they're like if I'm going through these things as an employee or manager, how are you as a CEO a rock?
exactly,
And you let them know
exactly.
like, well, I'm actually not. I'm the duck, right? I'm calm on the surface and
Yeah,
paddling like hell
yeah,
underneath. But I've had people say that to me too, like, "Oh, you've been my rock," and I'm like, "Well, honestly, like, I appreciate and like where that's coming from, and I can
right,
see that.
yeah,
But let me let you know, I know you're looking to me for that, which is why I'm trying to bring that sense of calmness and
hmm
stability. Believe you me, I'm terrified,
but
but that's not going to
you don't
change us
show
get.
it.
But that's not going to
Yeah,
change us going through this storm.
right,
I'll show it to people. I'll show it to Zach. I'll show it to, there's vulnerability is essential, but the people you lead need that source of stability, that source of calmness, that to
right,
follow it and to follow you back out of the storm when it's
Mhm.
time, full force, so that you actually plow out of it without getting swept away in it again.
Correct. Correct. Because these things come in waves, and then that's why we just say, just stay in the eye, just stay there, and there's a lot of different things that allow that to happen. And that's why, we have what's called the hero's compass. And the hero's compass is where you are monitoring all different aspects of your life. Okay. And you have, you have your spirituality, you have your business, you have your playtime, you have your personal time, you have, all these 10 different dimensions of your life. We all have them and such.
Mm-hmm.
And so you're constantly working that compass, sometimes every day, every week, depending on how much the chaos is, because, as an executive, we're going to focus on our business. We're going to focus on our people. We're going to focus on, our profits. We're going to focus on this, and then, it's like, oh shit, I got my kids I've got to take care of. I got my wife that I have to be there strong for. I can't go home and just, be a blubbering mess. I have to be that steady rock for them. And at the same time, I've got to think about myself. So I need to make sure that I schedule in my time at the gym, or my time to go to a movie, or my time to spend with them or something. I have to balance all of this out and such. And it's easy when you have a system that will allow you to do it, instead of just,
Well,
because
and I bet a lot of people feel like too that I bet a lot of people you work with really struggle at least the biggest thing I can think of is like, when you're compartmentalized, and let's say you spend the first 12 hours of your day, let's say 6 a.m. to 6 p.m., just
Mhm.
full force, blazing, mentally secure, sound, leading, charging forward
Right.
in your professional life. And then it's time to interact with your wife, and all of a sudden you come down from that you've segregated, and you have no, your fuse is this short. It's
Yeah.
like you catch yourself like, I've done this. Uh, you know, listening to her for 5 minutes, and it's like you're like in your mind's thinking, when's this going to end? And it's like, holy crap! And then you start putting things in perspective, and you're like, in 40 years, when one of us is dead, I'm going to look back at this time where I thought I was like annoyed or tired, and I'm going to cry myself to sleep.
Mm-hmm.
Or
Yeah.
hopefully I'm the one who's dead.
Right. And
Because
that's,
because it's so sad. Like it's almost like just heartbreaking when you compartmentalize and you give it all in one area at a certain time, and you've got nothing left
mm-hmm.
or no perspective on those other areas of life. And it's like, wow, did she ask for that from me?
Mm-hmm.
Like, why is your spouse getting the punishment of your chosen energy? And I put all my mechanical energy into my business today. Okay, well,
Mm-hmm.
you need some mechanical energy to get some shit done after dinner too.
Sure. Yeah.
you
And,
know
and what we have
with a
found,
smile on your face.
yeah, and what research has found is, because, the idea is not to be using willpower to do this, because willpower is finite. You only have a certain amount every day. So it just can't simply go on. But it's actually, willpower is actually almost chemical, as far as your neurochemicals in your brain. But, so you have to, you know, be able to have that foresight of, I'm going to use this up now. I'm going to use 80% of what I have for work, but I'm saving 20% for home. And then sometimes it'll be, hey, it's a great day. I'm only going to do 20% at work, and I'm going to have 80% at home. So there is that, there's that, it's not a constant, you have to keep this line going every single day, this amount and this amount. My grandfather taught me that. And my grandfather taught me, well, he was talking about relationships, because he and my grandmother were together, married 78 years. And
Wow.
Dang.
they did this
Wow.
big write-up on him. We lived in a little town in northern Minnesota. They did this big write-up on him and such, but he told me this one time that, I says, because they got along so well. And I said, when I get married, and I was younger, I was, in my teens. I said, when I get married, I said, I want to be like you and grandma. And he says, let me tell you the secrets. He goes, it's 80-20. He goes, you both got to be giving. You have to have the same rule. You're both always trying to give 80% to the other. He goes, it doesn't always work, but it'll balance out. And that's what he told me. He says, you're always giving 80% and taking 20. And she's always giving 80% and taking 20. He goes, sometimes it's 30-70, sometimes it's 40-60. He says, it
Yeah,
doesn't matter,
no,
but
and it's
it'll just balance out for you.
and some
And
people would picture that very similar, where they just say it's always 100, not 50-50.
right,
Meaning it's not someone's got to take 50 and someone's got to give 50. It's
right.
that everyone's
Yeah.
got to give the majority all the time.
So, but when people say that I'm going to give 100%, or especially when they say I'm going to give 110%, I'm like, yeah, I know, but your subconscious mind knows that that's a lie.
Yeah.
It just knows, So start working with something that actually makes sense to your outer self and your inner self,
Right.
because our subconscious mind is incredibly, incredibly powerful. It is what is driving you every single moment of the day, what it has learned and the lessons that it's learning, and what it's trying to do to protect you. It's like, oh, you're making that mistake. Don't do that. That's called fear. So they don't do that, but it's always trying to protect you. And thinking of it's like it's just like the way the body, when the body heals, it doesn't always heal as pretty as it was before it got injured, but it's doing what it needs to do to heal you, to get you through. But the subconscious mind, it's very easy to program, and it's happening every day. And there's a part of our program is what we talk about are called the sentinels. And you have different sentinels, and sentinels are these programs that are working in your mind. But sentinels are actually in your environment as well, because they are the people who are around you. They're, and sometimes they're your parents who are telling you, "Oh, honey, don't, no, don't start your own business. Don't do that. That's not a good thing." Well, they're not saying that because they think you're an idiot. They're saying that because they don't want to see you fail.
Hmm.
They're trying to protect you out of love. And then you have the other sentinels who are maybe somebody that you might work with who are more jealous of you and
Right.
such, and they're trying to subvert your efforts because they don't want to see you succeed. So there's a number of different sentinels. So many times what we have when we take people through this class and such, I'll get texts on my phone. It's like, oh, I found another sentinel, and it was my teacher from the third grade, and I could hear her voice in the back of my mind, telling me that I wasn't good enough. And
All
I
these
am.
all these sentinels are have they're acting out of their own fear.
Most of the time, or insecurities,
Right.
or jealousies. I mean, there's a number of different. There's
I
enough.
guess I would just loop
There's a
them all together, like they have a shortcoming
well,
of
but
their own
so
capability.
they have their own motivations. So they've come from different directions and such, and they come in different forms. And that's why we want to. Once you shine the light on a sentinel, it loses a lot of its power over you. Okay,
Do you
once
ever physically confront an actual sentinel?
you
Like,
don't need to. You don't need to.
you don't need to go beat up your third grade teacher.
No,
That's
no,
good.
no.
It's a long
As
trick.
soon as the light is shined on them, they will lose their power over you, or that event will lose that power over you, and such. And mind you, we're talking about people who may be dead, but they have left a lasting impression on your subconscious mind. And so you just have we take them through a process is that they'll find that sentinel, and then it's like I said, it's just like, okay, you hear a voice. Yeah, I hear, the back of my mind is, I can't do this. I'm like, okay, when did you first hear this? Take them back to when, and they're going to go, oh, it was yesterday. No, it wasn't yesterday. It was 5 years ago. No, wait, it wasn't 5 years ago. It was, oh my God, it was 20 years ago. I'm like, yeah, for 20 years. And now who's the voice? It was, and then they're thinking and they're thinking and they're thinking, oh my
And this
God,
is your sign that it's subconsciously programmed, because they can't,
right.
if they can get to it, it's like this massive exertion of energy. What
Exactly.
is the root of that? Like, why
Right.
do I have that shortcoming? Like,
Exactly.
holy
Exactly.
crap! Like, I didn't actually. No, I don't. No, that was actually, even if that was right in the moment is nothing now that it was then. I
Correct.
am nothing now that I was then. It doesn't even matter.
So, and that's why the when is so important.
Yeah.
Okay, and not even necessarily the why, because you don't know what their motivation was, but the when, the event, what was going on, and you start to paint that, and it's not always it's just what your subconscious is remembering, and all of a sudden it'll become that all of a sudden that face will just appear, or that sound, or that voice, or that event will just pop up, and it's like, okay, now was it as bad as you're remembering it? No, it was nothing. I'm like, yeah, make it go away. And then, yeah, I mean, and you'll just see this, like this the shoulders drop, and it's like, oh my god, I feel so much lighter. It's just like, yeah, that's, and but they, sometimes they come back, but not as powerful, and they just do the same process. You just go back to say, I see you. Sometimes it's a matter of saying, I understand that, because you're not fighting them, and I really want everybody to understand this. You're not fighting that, because it's you. You can't fight yourself. Okay, you're just identifying it. And sometimes, like let's say it was your mom, your mother, and such, or grandma, who you love very, very much, and you would never say a negative thing to you, because they were saying this negative thing, or what you took as a negative thing, out
Right.
of love. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
and then you just
Right.
say, I know you were trying to help me, and I says, and I love you for it, but I got this, and it's
So are you
gone.
saying this to your mind, or are you saying this to them? You're just saying
You're
this to your
saying it to
mind.
them. You're literally saying that to them in your mind.
In
And
your
you can
mind.
say it
Okay,
out. You
yes.
can say it out loud. Yeah, because
Now do you use this in the moment when someone tries to program a new sentinel into you?
you can. You can. Yeah. You say it in a
So
very
you could
loving.
you could just
You
stop
just
someone mid sentence and say, hold on.
yeah. Just say, hey, you know what? I appreciate your help. I
Listen,
know you're
this little
trying to help
noggin
me.
right here, you
Yeah.
you must be right, but unfortunately this puppy is at capacity. And it only things with blinders on, tunnel vision, and it's only
Right.
going up, and you're going down, and I just kind of reject that. So why don't you stand under my foot while I stomp you? All have a great day.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
something like that, right? So so
Yeah.
so you can actually just like stop. Do you have people that are so good at recognizing what those sentinels are that they're capable of just squashing them in the moment?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's
Yeah.
that's awesome.
Yeah. And sometimes, and a lot of times that's going to come from somebody who's very narcissistic and such, and you just like, who likes confrontation, and you just don't give them what they want. You're just like, hey, okay, great. I appreciate your input. I said, but I'm going this way, but thanks a lot. You know, no confrontation, no anger, no resistance. You're just like, great. You're
Didn't
just,
Robert was it Robert Downey Jr. who had some famous quote where he said something like, when someone tells you what to do, that's the wrong thing. Smile, nod, agree, just keep doing what you're doing.
mm-hmm.
It's
Yeah, I
like
think it
just
was
because
him.
you don't
Yeah.
because you don't who wins an argument? No one, right? So like even if I convince, hey Zach, you're wrong,
Right. Yeah.
your baldness looks stupid. And let's say I'm factually, hey now, factually proven right with that, the feeling that leaves him with is a losing feeling, it's a resentment feeling back to you. So there's no winning in going down that path. It's just saying, hey man, I
Right.
appreciate you so much.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I'm going this way.
Right. And you
So it's
walk
like a
away.
California howdy, like
You're going to walk away from
Me and my
that,
baldness
and
go a long way.
you're going to feel so empowered with yourself. You're going to feel absolutely limitless, because you're just like, holy moly, I feel great, because there's still that relief. No matter what, you're still going, wow, that was really cool. You don't dance the victory dance. You don't do anything. It's very stoic, just like, done, move on. What's next?
What if you have the mindset that doesn't allow the sentinels anywhere near you anyway?
that's you.
I
That's
know I
cool.
am.
Then
Yeah.
then
Like
that's
Zach's
that's
almost
great.
like you almost like have this false, no, I don't want to say false, just padded sense of surety.
Yeah.
Where it's
So
like, dude, you could probably scream and throw like a baseball bat at you, and you would just be like, "Yo, dude, stop! Get out of my way."
yeah. So I mean, Zach,
Well, you know,
there's a
and
lot
it's
of there's
funny.
people out there that they really don't. They don't have that. At least they don't think they do. In many cases, one of the things that we work on is we look at the behavioral patterns of a particular client. So we have, let's say we have this entrepreneur, this executive and such, and they just keep hitting this glass ceiling. It's like, I'm trying to get to the next level, but I just can't. Okay. Sometimes that's a sentinel that they don't know about. They
Right.
absolutely don't know about. And then we just do a little bit more digging. And it was like something is not letting them get to that next level of their career or their income level or whatever the case. And then we find it, and we just find it. It's like, well, and sometimes you have to approach that from so many different angles, because they themselves really, really, really do not know consciously.
Would you say some of people's biggest sentinels are themselves?
No.
No, because it has to stem
It
from
had
you're
to,
not
it had
born.
to have been
You're not
it,
born
it
with
had to have been programmed from somewhere
So
at some time.
where does me being my biggest critic that I should tell, I'm not saying it right. I beat myself up, but I don't allow it to bother me. I fix it and then I move on. So maybe
Okay.
it's not a sentinel, maybe it's not a wall.
So if somebody came to me with, let's just use that as an example, we're not talking to you specifically, but somebody came to me that with me, then I would find out where somebody else was really critical of their performance. Say a father, say a mother, say
Yeah.
a teacher, such who, at what time did you start being the most critical of yourself? And
But
generally, it will follow an event that had already happened, and now they're just trying to beat that other person to. They don't want to be criticized by that person again, so they're being overcritical of themselves,
okay.
so that person can't come in from behind and do it to them again.
Okay, that makes
Was your
sense.
father critical, Zach?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so you had a yin yang. If you had a critical father that
I
you
had a very loving father, but he was
sure,
he wanted me to be the best.
Right.
right,
Sure.
and then you had a mother. You had a mother who was like, "You can conquer the world. You can do anything you want."
But mom was also pretty hardcore about certain things too.
Well, that's what mother's for.
Yeah. But it's funny because sometimes people are baffled by my mindset. My mindset has been programmed into me, as I explained earlier, from a young age of being at every motivational speaker. When I got in trouble as a kid, and don't get me wrong, I've got my butt whooped, but 99% of the time, my mom would make me read a book, a motivational book, something like that, and then I'd have to write a report about it,
Good for her.
which that was living in hell. But now hindsight 2020 now is the greatest thing that could ever happen.
Right.
He's read
You know?
every Zig
I have read
Ziglar
every
and
Dale
Robert
Carnegie, Zig
Kiyosaki and
Ziglar. I've read them all. Yeah,
Dale Carnegie book ever existed
before I was 10 years old. But
before they were written.
I actually, and this is what baffles people, because I have trained myself, and maybe the train's not the word. I don't know. I programmed myself that I don't have sympathy or empathy. I'm also very, very, and I hate the word conceited, because I'm not conceited. I just know. My dad used to say, "You're not conceited, you're convinced." I said, exactly.
Okay.
So I don't have sympathy. I don't have empathy. I'm a duck. I let it roll off my back. I keep on moving. My memory for nonsense is nil. So by the time it happens, I've already forgotten it happened, because I've already moved on
Yeah,
to
but
the next
that's
thing.
your front too, bro. Because you come to me with a couple things too, where you're, deep, 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 deep down. You're like, I'm not liking this.
No, but then I do something about it.
Mm-hmm. So
And
Zach,
I've also been, and I like your theory of this being in the eye of the hurricane.
mm-hmm.
But I used to be in the eye, but I was the conductor of chaos. I knew everything that was going on. So
Well, you were in control.
yes.
All right. That's what the person in the eye does. They are in
Yes.
control. They are the
They used
ones.
to- when I ran the restaurant, when I was in the restaurant business many years ago,
Mm-hmm.
we could be in the middle of the most craziest rush, and they all just would look at me as I don't use the word savior because there's only one savior, but they would look at me as their rock because they knew
Mm-hmm.
that the conductor was there and the chaos wasn't going to affect me and I wasn't going to crumble. Mentally I could have been crumbling, but I wasn't going to let anybody see it because I had to
Correct.
keep that front to be the chief.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
You know,
I came from a similar background. So I ran I was CEO of a restaurant chain for, many years.
yeah,
And I would, yeah, it could be absolute chaos happening around me and such. But everybody was trained very well. Everybody
yeah,
knew their place and such. And two, and I would, I taught the management below me. I'm like, I don't want you participating in your employees' chaos.
right.
You should be like me. You should have everything. If things are in chaos, yes, you're going to correct it so your customers don't suffer. I said, but the next day, it better have been resolved.
Right.
You better have found where your systems failed and correct it, because
Well,
you should always be standing in that eye of the storm
100%.
so that people can look to you for guidance. Because if you're doing their job, who's doing your job? There is nobody. So something's going to fail.
And you had to be so good at every job
Mm-hmm. Sure.
that you could jump in. I mean,
Yeah.
nothing was better than a Friday or Saturday night and you walk through the kitchen and you see the expo guy going down in flames. And
Mm-hmm.
you knew, give me
Sure.
10 minutes, I'm clearing 14 racks of tickets and I'm getting all the food out.
Right.
Are you boys ready? Because we're about to do the biggest push you've ever done in your life. And then I just zing through tickets, throwing food up, slinging. I would literally slide trays. And if they didn't catch them at the end, you were getting fired because you just dropped the tray of food.
Mm-hmm.
And
And
people knew.
you need to go work at
No, I'll never go back in the restaurant business again.
Yeah. I think everybody says that eventually. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but it's, it's a very chaotic business. It's for young people. That's for sure.
It is 100% a young person.
And so I can definitely relate with everything that you're saying, but it's, but that mindset works in any industry.
And and it's true.
Mm-hmm.
And just to go back to the restaurant thing real quick,
Sure.
it's kind of like the car business and the restaurant business. I probably never go back to either of them. Cars and bars is all I did for most of my life
Mm-hmm.
because I've now gotten to the mindset, and I don't know if this last 5 years brought me to this mindset, but I have absolutely zero tolerance for ignorance.
Yeah.
So Karens or Kens or whatever they call the dudes and the chicks,
That's it.
I'd get fired and go to jail because I will punch somebody in the face. I just can't take it anymore.
I was in the car business for a very short time. I didn't care for it. I was very good at it, but I didn't care for it. And
you make that fat check, and then all of a sudden it's like heroin. You're chasing the dragon.
Yeah, pretty much. So,
Yeah.
But it's I like the pace. I like the idea. I loved it when I was meeting new people all the time, hearing their stories, hearing their backgrounds and such. And that's probably where you learned as well. Because that's when you really learn about people. And
well, when I think also, if I don't know what year you worked in the car business, but I started in the early '90s, and I had a different career prior to that, which was a much more structured, polished career,
Mm-hmm.
which just wasn't my calling. I thought it was. Everybody thought that that's what I was going to do, and it just wasn't me.
Mm-hmm.
But when I worked in the car business, so I learned to be from a young age. There's a book called Rhinoceros Success, and it teaches you to be a rhino.
Mm-hmm.
You have to have 7-inch thick skin. You can run
Right.
through walls. You're going for, your goal is to get to the end of the day to the mud puddle you want to go lay in and relax. That's what rhinos do. They just
Right.
charge and charge and charge.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're in the car business, you have to really have that 7-inch thick layered skin, because not only is your manager tearing you down, so is your customers.
Mm-hmm.
And in the 90s, there was not even a split second that if someone tried to cut you off, take one of your guests, you were out by the dumpster throwing hands. It didn't matter. It was just what you had to do. And so I think today's generation, and I'm not going to beat them up that bad, because I'm sure
I
my
will.
parents said the same thing about our generation. My dad was a boomer. No, my dad was before boomer. What's before boomers? He was born in the 30s.
Those are called Neanderthals.
Yes, he was born in the 30s. He walked the earth with Jesus. But but we were a bunch of wimps when growing up.
Yeah.
And compared to his generation, we stormed Normandy Beach and blah blah blah.
Mhm.
Okay, whatever, Dad. Great. I wasn't there, you know. And but I think everybody has become so worried about offending someone. Like it was not a bad thing to hurt somebody's feelings. To hurt them physically, that's not good.
Right.
But to hurt someone's feelings in not a negative way, but in a way that put them in check and they realized, okay, I better step up or step out.
Right. As a
I
learning experience.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah. Not
When,
just
when
putting
I
them
was,
down.
and I've used this before. I think Derek, I've said this. I played baseball and I was a catcher, and my dad we used to practice in my backyard, and he threw underhand. He threw pretty fast. He played little minor league, pro minor league when he was before he got drafted to Korea, and then he ripped his muscle in the war. And anyway, whatever. So we were down the Jersey Shore, and they have those booths where you can throw a baseball and tells you how fast you throw, whatever. So I got up there, and I did not have a very strong arm. And I did, I don't know, 40, 50 miles an hour, whatever it was. It wasn't nothing spectacular, nothing to go, oh, I'm getting drafted. My dad threw an underhand pitch, and it was like 92 miles an hour.
Holy
And I
crap.
said, what did you just do? He said, I just threw the ball. I go, do you throw it that hard at me when we're playing catch in the backyard? He goes, are you scared of a baseball? I go, I'm not. He goes, exactly.
Mhm.
Nowadays, if I threw a kid a ball at 50 miles an hour, they'd be like, stop, you're going to kill me,
Mhm.
And it just taught you to be tough. And I just think, and that wasn't a negative thing, because if I had missed the ball, I knew it was going to hurt. And then my dad would have said exactly probably what your dad would have said: rub a little dirt on it and get up and take it again.
Yeah.
And it just, these kids, that's why I don't think I'd never go back in the restaurant business, because the kids would drive me absolutely bananas. I just couldn't take it. And the car business, I see the industry. It's gotten very soft. I miss I miss the '90s when the manager reach over the desk and hit you with a folder and tell you to go sell it or get out, and fire you and tell you to go wait in the garage till the customer leaves, but you're fired. Then you come back, all right, go sell another car, stuff like that. So I think I like what you're doing, and I believe what you're doing is helping. I just think, and that's one of the, and Derek knows, I am actually, I have a branch off podcast that I'll be doing on my own, which is a coaching podcast. I'm going after former cars salespeople and former broadcasters. My degree's in broadcasting. I was an
Oh,
on-air
cool.
personality for a little while.
Mhm.
I did radio. I loved it. Just didn't pay anything. And I refuse to lower my standards and be like Howard Stern so I could make millions of dollars because I talk about what he talks about all day long. This is not my style. So what you're doing is fantastic, because I believe people need to realize you don't need to, as my friends would say, tap. You don't got to take another pill. It's in your head. Fix your
There you
head.
go. Yeah.
And when I'm the first to believe, I have never ever disbelieved in anxiety or anything like that, because I had a bout with it in the early 2000s when I found out my father was sick, and I lost him in '01. But it was like he was my hero, even though everybody used to think how tough my dad was on
Yeah.
me. My dad was tough on me. He made me tough. That was my
Sure.
philosophy.
Hmm.
And when I found out, he was dying, man never smoked or drank a day in his life, and he got cancer from freaking working in a factory when he was a kid. He got asbestos.
Yeah.
So how do you battle that?
Right.
And I didn't understand what was going on in my mind, because I'm stronger than my mind. You got to be Superman. You got to realize, but sometimes the armor does get a chink in it, and you got to fix it.
Hmm.
And so what I sat down and talked to a counselor. My dad actually suggested, which is really baffled my mind. So if Pop said to do it, I did it. He's like, you might need to talk to somebody. So I talked to somebody, and what they basically explained to me is the average human can take. I was in the restaurant industry, so they were using bar analogy. So the average human can take a shot glass of stress, and then they either learn they have to take a pill to calm them down, relax, or they take a dirt nap. And the therapist was like, She's like, you have a beer mug that is flowing over with stress. She's like, you should have already either been on pills or took a dirt nap. We don't understand how your mind's even handling all this. And it was because I was fighting it because I knew I was better than this.
Right.
But I finally broke down and needed help and realized. So I get it. But I also taught myself to come out of it. I don't believe in self um affirming speeches, all that in the morning where you look at yourself in the mirror and get you all so hyped. Whatever. I do it all day long.
Well, there you go.
But I taught myself that I can fix this without. I did go on medicine for a little while, and I realized the medicine was a mask, basically because the inside of my body was still freaking out, but I was on the outside. I was 4th of July. I was happy. You know, I was the good guy. I was all having fun, but I was still losing my mind inside.
Mm-hmm.
And I woke up one day and said, I'm better than this. And the only way I'm getting out of this is the good Lord's going to help me, or I'm going to be going to heaven, because it's either he's going to fix me or I'm going to be one of the dirt nap guys, you know?
Yeah.
And I stopped taking the pills, and I slowly but surely realized when my body was about to trigger an anxiety attack or a panic attack and what I had to do to get through it and how. And so I do, I guess, have compassion for people for that. I have no empathy or sympathy. It's not my problem. I don't care. So
Mm-hmm.
it's a terrible way to look at it, but I do have compassion, you know, because my daughter, who's in the other room, I don't want her to hear, but she battled with it for a while, and she tried different avenues, and finally she woke up and realized the only way to do it was the way I was telling her, was get in your mind, talk to God. That's how I did it. I talked to God.
Sure.
And we worked it out together.
Mm-hmm.
And I went through, and there was times where I literally thought I was dying. Like I wanted to peel my skin off. I didn't want to be in my body anymore. I couldn't take it anymore. And then one day it was done. It was gone. And so with your teaching, you can show people that you don't got to be in the storm.
Right.
You know,
I think that's the most important lesson.
Quit walking into the storm and back up and go, oh crap, it's calm here.
Yeah.
All right, I see what's going on. I get it. Let me see how I can fix it by not going that way. Maybe I got to go this way.
Exactly.
Or maybe I'm just going to sit here for a little while and take the piece of the eye and just watch.
Yeah. And then sometimes, you know, then when you're in that storm, and then you can actually, you know, I mean, one of two things happens. Either somebody sees you, like you were talking about being that rock in the restaurant. They see you and they just gravitate towards you.
Right.
It's just because you're just calm with all this chaos going on. Or you can selectively go, come here, let me show you something, and let me show you how this works.
Right.
And then it's that exponential growth, and then they now learn how they can go and grab somebody and pull them into the storm or pull them into the eye and such, and then help them, and then you get this exponential growth. But then you being that primer, there's nothing more rewarding, more self-fulfilling than knowing that you did this for this person. You know,
right.
You taught them how to fish. You know, it's just like, don't give them the fish. Here, come here, let me show you how to fish.
Well, and I look at it, the storm. I mean, two of the most notorious, you know, I don't know your religious background, but two of the most notorious stories in the Bible is, you know, the one where Jesus is on the ship in the storm. They're in the storm, and everybody's freaking out, and Jesus is sleeping. They're like, dude, what are you doing? They had to wake him up, and he was like, knock it off. The storm goes away. Yeah. So they look to their rock to take care of the storm. And then the other one, they're out in a storm once again, and he walks across the water. And one of them said, well, if he can do it, then I can do it. Right. So he went out there, and then he was like, all right, maybe I can't. I'm going to drown. And, you know, Jesus pulled him out. But he tried. And that's I guess that's the point. Mm-hmm. Either you sit there and look to your rock to help you control the storm.
Right.
Or you say, all right, if he can control the storm, I can control the storm. Mm-hmm. And if I can't, then he's going to help me anyway.
Right. And either way, you're no longer a victim to the storm.
Correct.
And so many people think that they're the victim. And I was like, nobody's a victim unless they make themselves a victim.
Okay. Awesome.
And that's the part that everybody really has got to start understanding. And in this day and age, especially with what, with social media and things like that, is that there is so much of this stuff, this rhetoric that comes down that you are a victim, you're a victim, and you're a victim, and you can't help it, and this is, woe is you, and this is like, no, I'm not a victim. And it's not woe is me. This is the circumstances. I understand the circumstances. And now I'm going to deal with them.
Right.
Okay. I'm going to take care of my little world right here. And then I'm going to get that set. And then I'm going to expand my world a little bit more. And I'm going to get that set. I'm going to expand my world a little bit more. And I'm going to get that set. I said, but I am not a victim.
Right.
And that was one of the biggest things when the Big C started, is that we wanted people to understand that you're not a victim. Because there was so much fear. I mean, I could listen to these television shows without watching them. I could just hear them. And I would cringe the way that people were talking. And I was like, no. I said, stop scaring people. Scared my wife to death. I mean, she was this is just overwhelming. And I was like, come join me. Come on over here. So
we've been chatting with you for a little bit. We probably got to wrap this up here.
All right, cool.
Let me ask you a question. What's your podcast called?
The Infinite Wisdom Experience. It's on YouTube.
Infinite Wisdom Experience. Okay, mm-hmm. We can find you on YouTube.
Yeah, absolutely.
How many shows do you do? Do you do weekly or you?
We do a show a week. So some of them, about 50-50 right now, are either interviews or we're going to do we'll do a live stream that is basically a training class.
Beautiful.
That we do for people.
Great. And your business, your training, your
we're at infinitemasteryconsulting.com.
Okay. That's what I want to make sure everybody can come check you out. And
yeah, please.
Listen to your website, and if they enjoyed what they heard tonight and want to get a part of it, I would love for them to go to your website. Infinite Wisdom
experience is on YouTube.
Okay, and then the
infinitemasteryconsulting.com is our website.
There we go. Excellent.
So we'll get that all in. We'll get that all in the description.
I appreciate it. Thanks.
So Derek is once we get our amazing editor, we'll get this taken care of, and we'll get a copy over to you. And
I really appreciate that.
Yeah, well, we appreciate you coming on the show. We probably want to have you back and chat some more. Does your partner ever join you on the show?
Yeah, he does. Normally we do a lot of interviews together, and his daughter was coming to visit him today, so he wasn't able to make it. But a lot of times there will be. I try to, as much as I can. I do most of the booking for us. To get us both going, but sometimes scheduling just doesn't work out.
Well, let's have him on next time.
Yeah. Gary's great. Gary's
great. Let's plan it real soon.
Anytime. And you got a hole to fill, we'll fill it.
Yes, we appreciate you coming on. Guys, thank you for watching. We love you. Please make sure you comment, subscribe, like, share, tell a friend, tell a phone, tell everybody. Next week, we got a really great guest. My coach is going to be on. He's going to tell you how good of a student I am. And
we all need someone to affirm us, Zach.
There you go.
You know I don't need affirmation.
I know you don't need any.
I am spectacular already.
The man of no sentinels.
We'll find one.
Did you see the movie, The Matrix? The sentinel in that movie. So I don't take sentinels.
Yeah, that's
a whole nother show.
When we were actually first starting out, we looked at the Matrix because there's so many different nuances and so many subplots that are going on there, and we were really intrigued. Actually, that's where the Sentinels came from. The term.
I was assuming that. So
that's kind of where that
you basically you describe the Sentinel mentally to the Sentinel in the movie to a T. So 100%. Well, again, we appreciate it, guys. We love everybody. And as always, we will see you soon. Peace.
Thank you. Bye-bye.